Good evening. We are here with the Wiley Resource Center. We are a legal support program, a nonprofit in the city of Chicago. My name is Melissa Williams. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm a volunteer attorney and the executive director at the Wiley Resource Center. And we have...
I am Larry Kimbrough, owner operator of Stay Focused Network and board member of Wiley Resource Center.
So you guys know the drill, those of you that have seen the show before. We are talking about House Bill 5723 is our primary topic. It is the Illinois sealing bill, right? Now we know we're not talking about expungement. We are talking about sealing of criminal records. Expungement is for those folks that don't have any convictions, that are able to get their records destroyed. Sealing is the next best option. If you do have convictions on your record, then what would happen is your record would be locked away so that the general public cannot view it, right? So that folks can get better access to jobs, education. And on tonight, our topic specifically is about housing. We have some special guests that are with us, and they work with the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless with the reentry program. We've spent a lot of time talking about how the sealing bill relates to employment, but tonight we're also going to talk about how it relates to housing. Now, what we do want to do, we have a couple of things that we want to talk about. I'm going to turn it over to Larry, and we're going to talk a little bit about our experience on last week dealing with the public hearing for the sealing bill.
So, as everybody was in the hearing, I'm texting students and people that's in the crowd or whatnot. So I'm hearing some good things. Can you explain your experience? I heard it was like a lot of testimonies being said.
I mean, the public hearing, we just really want to say thank you to Representative Ford and the Small Business and Workforce Development Committee in the Illinois House.
Ms. Flowers.
Representative Flowers.
Representative
We want to make sure that we thank them for setting up the hearing that we had on last Thursday, where we discussed House Bill 5723, the sealing bill, and why it's so important that it be passed. And we also discussed House Bill 1210, which is ban the box.
Right.
So those are things that we've been talking about on this show. It was great. It was an awesome experience because there were folks there like Dr. Dennis Deere from Deere Rehabilitation Services, who works with folks who are trying to re-enter into the community. And he gave testimony about the psychological effects of having a criminal background and not being able to get back to work and not being able to get housing and things of that nature. We had so many experts that were there. There were folks there from the state of Illinois Central Management Services. And they were talking about how the governor and their office believes that people should have a second chance. And so we're saying, you believe it, now let's put it into action. But the most phenomenal thing for us from our end was to see the room filled with people who are ex-offenders that were there to speak up for themselves and to fight for themselves to make sure that this bill gets passed. That was awesome to watch them walk into the room, and not only were they there to observe, but they were there to testify on their own behalf and to advocate for themselves. And that was awesome.
That was awesome, because I know they came back excited. And I was like, what are y'all doing? And they're like, yeah, we heard this person speaking. They spoke of all the things that we can do, and they gave us motivation, and everybody was, I'm like, yeah, we ain't lost hope yet, so we still got work to do. I think we got a caller. You want to take a quick call real quick?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Caller, you on?
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, my name is Carl Cummins, and
Hi.
I was trying to find out how did you get your records spun.
Okay. What we'll do, Carl, if you don't mind, we're going to go ahead and we're going to answer your question now, because we do have the guests that are going to be coming on as well. So thank you so much, Carl, for your call. As far as expungement is concerned, Again, that's for folks that do not have any convictions. But we want you to expand your mind. Like we're asking them to expand criminal record sealing in Illinois, to know that there are other options if you cannot get your record expunged. There's sealing, which we discussed, and there's also the executive clemency process or the pardon process with the Prison Review Board and the governor's office. Right. So we don't want you to lose hope if it looks like you're not able to get everything on your record expunged or to get everything sealed. If you are interested in getting your record looked at by either ourselves or folks from Cabrini Green who actually do this, volunteer attorneys who do this, so that means it's free. You need to grab your record from 35th and Michigan Avenue. And once you grab your arrest record, then you can come and you can visit with us over at the Wiley Resource Center. This telephone number that's up here is the information line, and our web address is also on here as well. So if you call that number, it will tell you our location, it will give you the dates, the times, and all of those things as well. And we will review your record for you and see what you're eligible to get. So I hope that information was helpful to you. All right, Larry, let's jump back into it a little bit more. Okay. And let's talk a little bit more about that hearing. So what were some of the things that the students say that they got out of the hearing?
I think more or less the consensus was that they actually got a chance to hear other people's testimonies. You know, everybody has their own individual stories or whatnot, but I guess it was more or less they were proud to hear somebody else going through the same struggles as they were, and they had a group of people going at it and supporting that cause. And again, it was, to me, it's just like, I was just happy just to see some people just actually motivated, and they said, we're going to keep going. What are we going to do next? How do we keep continuing to support the organizations? And it's just, like I said, it was a good feeling. Even coming out that we started, it was a little sluggish, but they got out there.
And, you know, we want to thank Larry Kimbrough, and we want to thank the folks that are over at New Age Services and just the different organizations that promoted the hearing so that their students and their clients could come out and testify and be heard. And I'm glad that you asked about next steps. Because one of the things that we're looking at with our sponsor, Representative Ford, Larry and his organization, as well as other organizations that might be interested, in the month of September, we want to have Day of Excellence, which is for ex-offenders, and we're trying to get it at Malcolm X College, so you will be hearing more about that on the show. We'll be talking about what to do when folks are being discriminated against in employment, in housing, some of the opportunities for employment that are out there for you. So we'll be doing that, and we'll be telling you more about that. Because one of the things that we want to do is we don't just want to say, hey, can you come and testify at this hearing? And even though it's for you, it's also for the legislators to learn as well. You know, but we also want to do some things that are in real time to help folks who are out here that are struggling and that are working on this bill. What I did want to make sure that we mentioned is that there were only a handful of legislators that were at the hearing. And there were a couple of folks that were Republicans as well as a few Democrats. But we want to encourage our legislators and let you know that you do want to become educated on this issue, because we are not going away.
Yes.
If for some reason this bill does not get passed this year, we will be back until it is passed. Because as Todd Belcourt, one of the attorneys from the Shriver Center that works with us, said, we're talking about between 2.5 and 3 million residents in the state of Illinois who are ex-offenders. Right. So we're talking about people, they need to get back to life. Right? And so that's why we're saying, come on, legislators, let's get on board. You know, you want our votes and you want our tax dollars to pay your salaries, right?
That's a lot of people organized.
Right.
That's a lot of people organized voting now.
Right.
Okay.
So, you know, and they have families and they have friends and neighbors that are concerned about them as well. So it's time to make that change, Illinois. Right. You know, it's not a novel concept to do sealing. Right. We've been one of the first states. We've been one of the leaders with State Representative Howard, who is now retired, who worked on the initial sealing bill. But it's time to expand that. Right. It is time to expand. We have one more topic before we bring up our guests. And that topic is about voting.
by voting.
We had to revisit voting.
Right.
In Illinois, ex-offenders, you can vote. So if you are not registered to vote, you need to get out there and get registered to vote. But what do we find in some of those other states? What's going on in some of those other states?
I didn't read the article like I told you. See, she gonna put me out there again. No. But in other states, you know, I really didn't read it that much. See, you can't tell me that. So you tell me what you read.
Okay, so on the news, they've been talking about this. The attacks against voting are real. Right? In Illinois, we're not having the same type of attacks as there are in other places, but we're looking at 3-4 million people at least who are ex-offenders and are not able to vote in other states. Now, they're not in prison. They're not in jail, right? They're walking around free like a lot of the folks that we're talking to on tonight. And the bottom line is they're not able to vote in their states. And so I know for sure the NAACP and a number of organizations are going to be campaigning hard, not only for this election, but the future as well, to change some of those laws. So we've heard about those voting laws that are now requiring people to bring ID to the polls and all the problems that that's causing. But it's also, you know, at least 4 million people that are out here, you know, that are not able to vote, that are in other states. So if there's a chance to speak out for those folks, at least to sign a petition or to lend our support, we really need to do that, because we're blessed here in Illinois for ex-offenders to be able to vote, but they are fighting the battle in other states.
And while they're waiting, it becomes even harder and harder for their families. So we need to act now and invest more time into this. Like you said, even with the billboard that they're trying to do now, can you explain what that's going to do?
The billboard will be going from state to state. So I know between tomorrow, which is the 28th, and probably around September the 5th or 6th, the NAACP does have a traveling billboard that's going to be going to different states and telling the stories of a number of ex-offenders, you know, who are fighting the battle for themselves as well as other folks to be able to get their voting rights.
So is it going to be like a lot of testimonies going on as far as like video with the trailer and whatnot? Is it going to be like
I
that?
don't know that part. You might want to call them once you read the article. So if you have any questions, feel free to call in. We want to make this quick announcement, and we're going to have our friends that are going to be coming up from the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. There is an emergency 911 red flag town hall about violence in Black America and in Black communities around America. It's going to be with our sponsor of our bill, Representative Ford, as well as a number of organizations, the NAACP, the Urban League, Black Star Project. And there's also going to be representatives there from the state's attorney's office and a number of agencies. So on tomorrow night, Tuesday, August the 28th, from 5 to 8, we're going to be over at Christ the King High School. That's 5088 West Jackson Boulevard in Chicago. You want to come out. You want to hear the presentations. But we don't just want this to be a situation where we're listening to presentations. We also want people to speak up and speak out. So there will be an opportunity for residents to address the panel for 2 minutes each. Also, we just found out from Representative Ford that there will be folks there from the Illinois Department of Employment Services and folks there talking about jobs. So you want to come out to this emergency town hall, 911, Violence in Black America. Looks like we have another caller. Yes, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, I'm interested. Can you hear me?
Yes. We can hear you.
I'm interested in knowing if someone has completed their time, whether in prison or did probation or paid the fines or whatever, why is it that they can be stopped from voting? I know in Illinois you said that it's not like that, but in other states it is. What is it about other states that prevent them? How can they actually do that? If, from my understanding, unless I have a misunderstanding, according to the Constitution, they have a right to do that.
Absolutely.
Once they're no longer in prison.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Caller, we're going to answer your question. Thank you for calling in with that question as well. The reality is people are applying the law however they want to apply it. And that's why you're ending up with these lawsuits and they're in court over these issues. So some of the states, it's made it to federal court on the issues. Other states, they're battling it out still in state court about these issues. And I guess the goal is, there are some folks out there, they want to win their election by any means necessary. So they're using whatever tools they possibly can to do that. And they're using purging the voting rolls and coming up with these rules and keeping ex-offenders from voting as their way of winning the election in their minds, right? So this is a battle that is for the courtroom. But what we've also got to remember is even though some battles are for the courtroom, we still need to stand up and speak out. So that's what we're going to be asking people to do, is sign petitions and to show that there is public support for a change in these laws, or that some of these unconstitutional laws be stricken. Right? So that's where we can come in, and that's the role that we can play to encourage the courts to do the right thing. Okay? So what we're going to do now, we're going to turn to our guest and have her to introduce herself to you all.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having us on the show. My name is Rachel Ramirez. I'm a community organizer with the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. In a minute, I'm going to hand it over to a formerly homeless leader that we work with at the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. We're very concerned about the issue of ex-offenders and ex-offenders re-entering society. For the Coalition for the Homeless, we know that having a record, having that mark on your record, can lead to very, very extreme barriers to housing, to employment. And in the case of housing, it can oftentimes lead to homelessness. So what in our most recent research that we did in emergency shelters across Chicago, we found that 48% of people who are staying in the shelter system have a felony on their backgrounds.
Oh, wow.
So it's a very important issue for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things that we do want to say is that the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless is one of the supporters or the proponents of House Bill 5723, which is the ceiling bill. Now, we've talked a lot, to be honest with you, about how this applies to employment, but can you kind of educate all of us, those that are watching and us that are here in the studio as well, about how it connects when it comes to housing?
Great. Well, individuals with criminal backgrounds suffer discrimination when they're searching for housing, and as I just said, it's often a barrier for people who are trying to find housing. The Chicago Coalition for the Homeless is currently working with the Chicago Housing Authority to see how this affects public housing. And for us, we've been working on Section 8 housing. Many people, even those with records, don't know that if you have a felony, you do have housing rights, and you deserve to have those housing rights protected. In particular, with Section 8, or housing choice vouchers, if you have a felony on your background, you can apply and you can get into Section 8 housing. That's something that a lot of people have misinformation about. There's only 5 felonies that would exclude somebody from getting into Section 8 housing.
Okay.
And those are sex offenders, manufacturing methamphetamines, violence or drugs related incidents occurring on public housing land. And if you're currently abusing drugs or alcohol, those are the only stipulations that CHA has for you not being able to get into Section 8 or public housing.
And to be honest with you, several of those that you have mentioned are barriers that are going to be very tough to fight because of the types of offenses that they are, the more violent type of offenses, the higher level felonies, the X's, the 1s, the 2s quite often. are the ones that it's even difficult to make the argument for when it comes to sealing. Right. So that's why you see, even with the sealing bill, we're talking about the expansion of sealing when it comes to nonviolent offenses. Now, we know that there are a number of folks that have the other offenses on their records that might have to deal with the manufacturing of methamphetamine or murders or sex offenses and things of that nature. And there are still going to be groups that advocate for you and attorneys that will work with you and represent you. But we want you to know that, you know, the bottom line is, when it comes to this sealing piece, we've got to fight one step at a time. You know, and battles are not won overnight.
Oh, no, they're not.
You know? And a lot of times what you want to do is you want to be able to build some type of alliance with people who initially may be on the other side of the fence from you, and kind of get them to see why what it is that we're advocating for is so important.
Right.
Okay. So we appreciate you for coming in.
Absolutely.
Now, how do folks get in contact with the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless if they need to get some type of information from you? How would they reach out to you?
Right, absolutely. Well, we do have a website. It's chicagohomeless.org. And you can also call into our office. The number that you can always reach us at is 312-641-4140.
Awesome. And you know what we want to do as well, because you know the Coalition for the Homeless did take the time to come out and visit with us on tonight. If you weren't able to get that number, we're going to get that from them as well. And if you give us a call and leave us a message after you listen to the info line, we will also connect you with them also by giving out their phone number to you. So the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless, if you want to get in contact with them and you weren't able to catch that information, give us a call and we will connect you with them. So we have another guest, a volunteer with the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless, and we're going to let him introduce himself as well.
Good evening. I'm Charles Austin. I'm a leader, organizer, and volunteer with the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless.
Okay. Tell us about some of the work that you do and why it is that you can see the intersection between the work that you do and what we're proposing with the sealing bill.
Well, as a formerly incarcerated individual myself, often we face barriers with employment, but also with housing. When you're stuck earning $8.25 to $10 an hour, with market rate rent here in Chicago being $7.50 to $8.25 for a one-bedroom apartment, it's very difficult on those wages to pay rent, as well as utilities, buy food, transportation to and from work, and maintain an apartment. So those are the things that we've addressed and we're looking at, and why it's so important that as we peel back this onion of dealing with the sealing aspect of it, we also have to tackle the barriers of housing. When we began researching this information, we looked at it and we started to title our position paper Parole to a Shelter, because so many individuals come home from the institutions here in this state and they have nowhere to go. They're locked out of, discriminated against when they go to apply for market rate housing, because landlords don't want an ex-offender or felon living on their property and things of that nature. So it's all intertwined, and as we address it and move forward, those are the kind of things that we looked at.
Okay. And you know, one of the things that we've heard from some of Larry's students that we were working with on last week is, you know, I've got this offense that's on my record that's 10 years or more old, and I'm not able to get housing for something that is so old. It's the same thing as we've discussed when it comes to employment. And so that's why we're thinking, you know, we want to look at sealing, but we also want to examine some of our local laws as well, as far as putting some limitations on not just employers, but also landlords being able to look back at something that's 15 and 20 years old and telling someone that you cannot stay here, right? Because people have to be able to stay somewhere. Looks like we have a caller. Did we have a caller? Okay. But yeah, that's one of the things that we want to kind of examine also, is how can we help with that situation. So Elder Austin, we want to thank you for coming out as well. If you have any questions, we want you to feel free to give us a call over at the Wiley Resource Center. If you want to get in contact with the folks at the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless, and we hope you do, give us a call and we will definitely connect you with them. The last thing we want to remind you of is this violence town hall that's going to be occurring. And this is not just going to be a situation where we're going to be talking about the problem, but we are looking for solutions, and we are looking for you to help us be a part of the solution. So if you have time, please feel free, and please ma'am, and please sir, drop by on tomorrow evening between 5 and 8 over at Christ the King High School. Representative Ford and a number of organizations are going to be talking about the violence issue, and we're going to be coming up with solutions. Thank you so much, and we will see you later.